part of our boss fight mini-series, we'll occasionally discuss brawls that take inspiration from certain climates, weaponize them to their advantage, or are even made from the element in question. And naturally, we're kicking off with one of the most literally fluid of elements, water. In the right hands, water can be a dangerous force to trifle with. Heck, just like our waterbenders.
Skins filled with liquid, and I passed. I think I peed a little.
Not only that, but who knows what kind of monstrous behemoths lurk below the briny depths. Well, you won't have to wonder about it too much, as we'll be going over some of our personal favorite liquidated bosses and how they represent water or use it to wash us away. And you can't say that our choices are watered down. I pay my staff too much for jokes like these. Already off the bat, Kirby's epic yarn is a whimsical, cute little piece of eye candy as our favorite pink bottomless pit is transformed into a crocheted bottomless pit and brought into a hand-knitted world. Naturally, everything in this world is made of yarn, including the bosses, such as our stringy, secretive underwater baddie, Kapamari. What's so secretive about a knitted squid? Well, for the first half of the fight, your main goal is to just avoid his monstrous tentacles, even take them out if you can, and pull on a loose thread to unwind his wool knit cap. And it turns out he was an octopus pretending to be a squid. Like you do?
I've been living a lie!
I can't pretend to get it either, but whatever the case, you exposing Kapamari's secret makes him literally red in the face, and here's where things start picking up. He'll hide himself in a cloud of ink, fire his own tentacles, or even himself as corkscrew projectiles, and even send his own babies after you. Since inhaling your enemies is out of the question this time around, you gotta work with what you got, which, fortunately, is shape-shifting powers and a lasso to literally toss your foes aside. All you gotta do is be quick to dodge and injure Kapamari enough before he literally comes apart. Your best bet is to toss him around or throw his own children at him to stun him.
You know, the more you read into it, the world of Kirby gets a lot less whimsical.
Joking aside, this brawl really highlights what makes the game an eye-catching spectacle. The only reason it's so low is that while it's definitely unique visually, the mechanics aren't exactly anything new, and it only slightly takes advantage of its underwater setting, and the rest of the entries on this list just wowed me more. But it all still comes together for a fun, endearing, creative, and unintentionally gruesome clash with an identity-impaired cephalopod.
Too much water?
The water type in Pokemon is considered a more balanced typing, having a good combination of defensive moves and offensive utility. You can honestly fit both roles when using one. Due to this, a lot of water type trainers are pretty fun to fight, unless you chose a fire starter, but let's not think about that. While we could choose a powerful legendary like Palkia and Kyogre, the trainers tend to have a little more personality. And despite that jab at the beginning, we aren't looking at Wallace or Archie. We wanted someone a bit newer. We wanted someone with a bit more clout, and in a game where you can have giant Pokemon battles. Sometimes you just gotta think big. Nessa is Sword and Shield's resident water master with a cool design and interesting background. She spends her time juggling between her modeling career and that of a gym leader, struggling to excel in one or the other. Though it doesn't help she spends her time battling the grass gym leader Milo the most as her rival. In Sword and Shield, you battle her twice. The first time is her gym battle where she doesn't really do anything special. Her signature Pokemon Dreadnought and Dynamax, making it kinda annoying, but as I said earlier, grass type wins. When you fight her in the Champions Cup, she puts up a little more of a fight. Between having strong picks like Golisopod and Barraskewda added to her team, she can also Gigantamax her Dreadnought, allowing it to use the move G-Max Stone Surge, which can not only do a lot of damage, but also add a Stealth Rock effect to the field.
I'm pretty sure I heard every competitive player cringe in unison.
What puts Nessa over trainers like Misty and Wallace, both excellent contenders, is more due to Gen 8's presentation and setting than anything else. Plus, it's cool to see an evolution from Dynamax to Gigantamax between battles. You don't see that often with the other leaders. However, between Pokemon being generally an easy franchise and Gen 8 not having any balance with leveling or battling in general, she's pretty low. At least she isn't low in terms of popularity.
7.8 out of 10. Too much water.
While there they're not usually aggressive, you never want to mess with a Stingray in the wild. If you agitate them enough, they'll float like a butterfly and sting worse than a bee, which of course makes them the perfect inspiration for a water-themed Mega Man boss, Jet Stingray. Of course, before you actually get to tussle with him, you gotta find him first. A good chunk of the level is you on a motorcycle dodging obstacles as you chase after Jet, kinda like a chase before the kill. Nothing too extraordinary here, just play it smart, shoot everything, and try to catch up to your high-flying foe. When you finally do catch up to him, that's when things really kick into high gear. The guy fights both under the ocean and in the air and is lightning fast at both, making him a lot more versatile. Speaking of mobility, he can bash into you at supersonic speed like a majestic gliding death flyer. And to top it off, he's armed with the Ground Hunter, a handy little gizmo that can make little robotic stingrays that can crawl along the terrain and stun its enemies. I told you, stingrays don't mess around. His main weakness is ice, so with the right weapon attached, you'll be able to literally stop him cold in his tracks. And once you shut Jet down, you win one of two prizes depending on who you're playing as. Zero learns Jet's flying jump technique, while X walks away with the Ground Hunter weapon. Trust me, it'll come in handy when you meet Slash Beast.
Oh no. I feel the urge to. Rude.
Yep, we're talking about Final Fantasy, and the one that started that particular trend, Final Fantasy VII. Or at least its remake. Yeah, we aren't talking about Emerald Webbing. Gosh, no. But there is another godlike being that you find in the Final Fantasy VII remake that's also water-themed. Leviathan is a popular and recurring Final Fantasy summon. Last time most people fought him, it was either in Final Fantasy XIV or Final Fantasy XV, but let's not go there. Despite being in a VR setting, don't ask, Leviathan hits hard. If you don't come in with high resistance to magic, Leviathan will drown you with its attacks. Water lasers launch bubbles at you and dive down and come up and sweep you with its tail. In his second phase, he can summon whirlpools and fly. None of these come close to his strongest attack, Tidal Wave, which can do a deluge of damage if you aren't prepared, even killing you at full HP. Luckily, Leviathan can be staggered pretty decently, especially while he's flying, though the gauge drops a little faster than previous bosses. You would need to rely on Barret or Aerith to get the job done, but the range attacks are on point. The other thing you gotta worry about is he is resistant to the last summons you got, Ifrit and Shiva, making you rely on Fat Chocobo if you need a summon to do some damage. Final Fantasy VII's remake does a pretty good job making each boss feel like a juggernaut to fight, and Leviathan is no different. Even at the tail end of the side quest chapter 14, he's still difficult. The next few bosses have a higher scale to them compared to the Water Serpent, but don't count him out. He was the king of the Eidolons and definitely lives up to it.
Just don't deal with him on hard mode unless you want to deal with no items and limited MP. Otherwise,
I'm going to die now. I'm going to frickin' die now.
I tell you this, there's nothing like beating the heat down by the old swimming hole, home to some disgustingly murky water, shady guys dumping corpses in said water, and an oversized zombified salamander that makes Moby Dick look like a pussycat. And thus we have our first boss of Resident Evil 4, Del Lago. You end up having to face down this monstrous guppy when you get your boat anchor caught on it, and, well, imagine this fight with the Jaws theme dubbed over it.
There you are, you stinking bilge rats! Stop playing that music!
Thankfully, even though Del Lago's literally stringing you along, it doesn't take that much strategy to take him out. Using your limited supply of spears, you just gotta take aim and harpoon the beastie at least 10 to 12 times. The problem, you also have to be careful not to fall out of the boat. If you do, you better be pressing swim as though your life depends on it, because it literally does. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why get on the boat at all? Can't you just shoot the monster from the dock where it's safe with your gun? Yeah, about that. There's actually an Easter egg where you can test that theory. The results...
Will you stop it?
Yeah, the concept of the boss fight doesn't sound very thrilling on paper, but when you see Del Lago in action, it is terrifying. From the menacing shadow beneath the water to the beast's enormous size and killer bite. Oh, and even if you can smite the beast, you also gotta be quick to untangle yourself from the snag or you'll still die. So, how about we just stay home with the sprinkler this summer? Cool? Cool. You ever wonder why they tell you don't read the comments?
because too much negative energy will turn you into that!
For context, Chaos is the guardian of the Chaos Emerald, unleashed onto the world by Eggman to, what else? conquer the world. It's been a recurring foe throughout the game, harboring each of the emerald's negative energies to take on a different form. But in the final battle, Chaos goes for the entire honeypot, absorbing all 7 emeralds' negative energies to become an oversized liquid kaiju monster bent on flooding the entire city and crushing everything in its path, including Eggman. See, Eggman? This is what happens when you don't share your lattes. Of course, there's only one way to take on a perfect negative monstrosity with a perfect positive monstrosity. By harnessing the positive energies of the Chaos Emeralds, Sonic goes Super Saiyan mode, faster, stronger, and accompanied by the game's main theme as his battle music. To tame the enraged watery beast, you have to whoosh through the flooded city, rush through Perfect Chaos's body, and give it a reassuring kick to the brain. Literally. You'll have to do this at least 6 times. The first 3 times are way too epic, skating along the water, dodging Perfect Chaos's attack, and hearing Open Your Heart in the background adds a much grander scale to the showdown. The second half, feels kind of dull by comparison. Yeah, it's definitely more challenging with Perfect Chaos tossing out more attacks, but it kind of feels like it's getting sloppier with its combat. Also, the fact that they stopped playing Open Your Heart by the second half really downplays the fight. Okay, the scoring they use is fine, it's just that a battle usually feels more epic if you bring in the main theme song as the battle music. It works for the Power Rangers. Regardless of my nitpicks with the second half, the battle overall is still a monumental clash. Not only is Perfect Chaos's design amazing to look at, but seeing all his station squares submerged and knowing that our monstrous friend is basically having a mental breakdown really gives you a sense of how dangerous the situation really is. This is the only time we get to play as Supersonic in the whole game, and they made sure that it was well worth it. Heck, even the remake for Sonic Generations wasn't half bad either, so I'd recommend checking that out too.
Honestly, I'm not sure what else to say, but that!
I just thought you might like some mac and cheese made with Vermont white cheddar.
What do I look like, an imbecile? Of course I want some mac and cheese. I love the way you make it!
Platinum Games is a studio synonymous with absolutely incredible and over-the-top bosses, and for many, their magnum opus is Bayonetta. The game's bosses cover a pretty big variety of locations, including, what else? Water. Many of them have very weird designs, and the latest one you fight is...
That is both exactly and not at all what I expected.
Sapienza is...
looks like a fish laced with Joker venom fused with Pelagia.
the latest angel to stand in your way, and the fight takes place on the surface of the ocean. Like many of the bosses in Bayonetta, Sapienza...
it looks like a rejected Metal Gear Ray concept got into Granny's lipstick.
...is divided into various segments, but this opens up with you literally surfing on a piece of shipwreck to attack its legs. Phase 2 is even crazier, with you summoning a giant fuck-off spider, then trying to run Sapienza into it. We then move on to Phase 3. We go back to the surfboard, but this time it's through a giant frickin' vortex. The fight climaxes as you unleash the giant spider, who summons its children to eat Sapienza alive. Spiders are objectively scarier than stingrays. As usual with Bayonetta, the boss fights are insane, creative, and over the top, and this is no different. I like how it makes as much use of the environment as it can and delivers some great water-themed scenarios. The only real problem with the battle is that it's a bit on the easy side, at least by Bayonetta standards.
Just doesn't feel like a Platinum Games boss unless I used at least 5 continues.
Shots fired!
Here comes Monster Hunter, the kings of monsters and the hunters who hunt them. Well, the name isn't what matters. Like many games with a variety of monsters, water monsters not only come into play, as is custom for this list, they are seen on the higher tier of the boss scale. While we could look at elder dragons like Namiel, which we won't, trust me, let's look deeper into the waves. So deep that we would have to dive straight into the abyss. Abyssal Lagiacrus is the strongest version of the Lagiacrus, Monster Hunter 3's flagship monster. As expected of a boss like this, you need to dive deep into Monster Hunter 3's oceans to find him, and he is not an easy opponent. Having complete domination in the water, it is very mobile and can easily overwhelm you if you aren't used to 3's water controls. Not only can it swim well, but like the normal Lagiacrus, it has the ability to shoot lightning from its scales, though the Abyssal is always fully charged, so good luck. Oh yeah, he can also create whirlpools to steal your oxygen. So why is it here? Well, the Lagiacrus itself was a powerful foe and main threat throughout Monster Hunter 3's main story. Take that and make it harder and stronger, and you get Abyssal. Even if you think 3's water controls are a bit sluggish, which isn't wrong, it's hard not to enjoy the scale and ferocity that this boss brings to the table. With the right set, you would be able to counter Lagiacrus's attacks and have more survivability. If there was a water boss to push you while still being fair, this was it, though the water physics are the main reason why it's only at number 3. There are generally a few immutable truths about the Zelda franchise. There's always someone to save, usually a princess, but not always. There's always dungeons for our protagonist to puzzle his way through, and there's always something sinister lurking just under the surface. Breath of the Wild shakes up a lot about the Zelda formula. Instead of a Ganondorf pulling the strings, we have what seems to be a literal embodiment of chaos and evil in Calamity Ganon. Instead of rescuing a damsel in distress, it's actually Zelda keeping everyone safe while Link gets his act together. But most importantly, instead of the usual big dungeons, there are literally hundreds of mini dungeons called trials and 4 dungeons that serve as boss fights in and of themselves. This brings us to Divine Beast Varuta. Elephantine in shape, this particular Divine Beast has an affinity for water. It's so powerful that it's able to cover an entire quadrant of Hyrule in never-ending rain under the corruption of Waterblight Ganon. It's only by the good grace that the Eternal Torrent takes place in the domain of the Zora, who prefer to live in the water anyway, but they kind of want people to not drown, so they ask you to do something about it. On his way to deal with the blights corrupting the Divine Beast, Link meets the Prince of the Zora, Sidon. Together, the two conspire to get Link inside the Divine Beast where he can deal with Waterblight Ganon. To do so, Link must ride on Sidon's back in order to get close enough to Varuta. Now, for many people, Varuta was their first boss, and as soon as you swim up that waterfall and slow-mo shot that switch, this was the point where people were definitely on board where the game was going. However, the corrupted Varuta doesn't take the assault lying down. It spawns massive cubes and later spike balls of ice and hurls them at Link and Sidon. In order to progress, you must either deflect the ice with a sword and bow or unmake them using the Sheikah Slate's ability to make and destroy ice. Given those options, well, swords and bows break and bows run out of arrows too. The Sheikah Slate doesn't break or run out of ammo. Make your own call on that one. Once all 4 switches are hit with shock arrows, Varuta becomes docile enough for Link to board, and technically the boss fight ends there. However, even once inside Varuta, you have to fight to purge the corruption and manipulate the water levels. So I think I'm gonna cheat a little and consider that part of the boss too, even if it is ostensibly the dungeon. Now, why is Varuta itself on the list but not Waterblight Ganon? Well, despite having Water Blight in its name, it doesn't really use water all that much, aside from stealing the ice block trick from Varuta. So, no real place on the list for it. Primal Kyogre, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Regular Kyogre wasn't hard enough for you? How about we add a shinier coat of paint and an ancient hidden potential? Saris, Metroid Fusion. It doesn't do much other than try to ram you, but definitely motivation to stay out of the water. Maz, World of Warcraft. Fish are friends, not food. Would you believe they called this a minnow? Linda, the hulking lungfish, Psychonauts. The designs of the game are off the walls as it is, and this counts as hideous? Morphle, Twilight Princess. It couldn't quite measure up to Varuta, but it's definitely in a monstrous class of its own. Cedius from Monster Hunter. That's how I'm pronouncing it, don't at me. It easily towers over Lagiacrus in size, but it didn't have as many skills, so it barely missed the mark. Misty, Pokemon Gen 1, the original water gym leader and the one who paved the way for even better leaders along the way. After God of War 2 ended on a massive cliffhanger, literally, fans everywhere were left breathless over what the next installment in the franchise would bring. Right out the bat, you are riding the Mother Titan Gaia as she and the other Titans ascend Mount Olympus. After facing some minor enemies, you get to the first boss of the game, Poseidon. Poseidon is the god of the sea, yes, but his lesser-known portfolios include storms, earthquakes, and horses, and these are cleverly reflected in his design. Poseidon begins the fight by unleashing his summons against Gaia, which naturally slows her down. As you begin to break through them, Poseidon himself starts fighting a little more directly with you, trying to skewer and zap you. This is a pretty interesting fight in 2 ways. One is the scale. It's impossible not to feel like a badass swinging around Olympus and laying the smackdown on Poseidon. 2, it's that Kratos is surprisingly working alongside someone, Gaia. You need to break Poseidon's hold on her so she can fight back and get you closer to him. The fight climaxes as Gaia punches Poseidon's physical body out of his summon, and you deliver a no-holds-barred beatdown to him. This is all presented from his point of view, which really sells the impact. In fact, that's kind of why this boss is so great. It takes the idea of God of the Seas and does everything it can with it. And to think, the first boss, and arguably best boss in the game, is a water boss. Given that gaming and water usually have a strained relationship, this is an accomplishment. To say nothing of the gruesomely immersive way you finish the fight, as it appears that nobody tricked him.
That's disturbing.
I'm the Fiery Joker, and yikes, talking about all those water bosses made me thirsty. That's disappointing.
Cut!
Hey everyone, this is Josh. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Please check out my other social media like my Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr. Consider checking below the video and donating to my Patreon, Streamlabs for my merchandise, or becoming a YouTube member, and you'll get rewards like this. Our name shoutouts come from Peter Apple, Rainbow Hooves Productions, Ryan Anderson, Sonic Cody, and Misty Phantom. Our messages are as follows. Rainbow Hooves Productions says, "Have a wonderful day, everyone." Ryan Anderson says, "Keep safe and have a great day, everyone." Peter Apple says, "Have a good day, everyone." I think they want you to have a nice day. Thanks for watching.